All right, Shalom. This is Brother Gabar. And before I hop into this lesson, first and foremost, I would like to give all praises to the Most High and their true Paleo-Hebrew names and in the Paleo-Hebrew tongue. So with that, I would like to say, Kal Halayim, La Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushua, Bahashim, Ha, Rakah, Kodash, Ma'amaf. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS. Double honors to my elder as well, Harwan Banyasharallah. And Shalom to the Akim and the women and children that sincerely believe, man. All right. So as you can see, the title of this lesson is Hope lies within the effort. All right. Hope lies within the effort. All right. And without further ado, I'm gonna just hop straight into the scriptures, man, and let the word of the Lord Yahweh Hashem Yahushua speak. All right. So this is the book of Matthew, chapter 17, starting at verse 14. The point is in verse 20 and 21. And if I'm moving kind of quick, Salakia, my phone don't have too much storage, so I know it's gonna cut out soon. But again, this is the book of Matthew, chapter 17, starting at verse 20. Salakia, starting at verse 14, the point is in 20. And when they were come to the multitude, there came to him a certain man kneeling down to him and saying, all right, and the day that they are talking about is Yahushua and the disciples. All right, it says, and when they were come to the multitude, there came to him a certain man kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is lunatic and sore vexed. For oftentimes he falleth into the fire and off into the water. All right. So a man approaches Yahushua and the disciples, pleading for help because his son is grievously vexed with unclean spirits and demons, man. All right. And it says, and I brought him to thy disciples, and they could not cure him. Then Yahushua answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me. And Yahushua rebuked the devil, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Yahushua apart and said, why could not we cast him out? All right. So the disciples asked, because they were not able to cast out those demons and unclean spirits from that man's son, but Yahushua was. So then they came and asked Yahushua, hey, why weren't we able to cast out those unclean spirits and those devils, man? And it says, and Yahushua said unto them, because of your unbelief. For verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as the grain of a mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. All right. So the Lord told them, man, the reason they wasn't able to cast out them devils and them unclean spirits because of their unbelief, man. Within their own minds and hearts, they did not believe in totality that the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua gave them the power to cast out those unclean spirits and those demons and those devils, man. And that's spiritual because striving to be man of the Lord and stand for the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua Salakia and teach this truth, knowledge, and wisdom and understanding, we first have to realize that the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua gave us that same power to cast out those devils and unclean spirits out of ourselves. Right, because we got to purge ourselves and cast the mote and the beam out of our own eye before we try to go and do it unto our brothers and sisters, and those of our people that are sick out here, man. We got to first know that the Lord gave us the power to cast out our own sicknesses, man. All right, it says, because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as the grain of a mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. All right. And man, that's all the Lord requires us to have is, man, faith as the grain of a mustard seed. A mustard seed is one of the smallest seeds, but it grows into one of the biggest trees with the strongest roots, man. All right. It says, but the thing is, yes, that mustard seed is small, but how I said, it grows into one of the biggest trees with the strongest roots. But you have to nurture that seed properly, man. You know, first and foremost, you got to till that ground and break up that fallow ground, so that seed can even be planted, right? And then you have to properly nurture that seed with you know, the right amount of water, the right amount of sunlight, you know. And as it grows, you know, you trim the weeds, and you trim the thorns that, you know, try to grow up on it. You know, you spray your natural pesticides on it to keep them, you know, spiritual insects off of it. And, you know, but you gotta nurture that seed, man. Properly nurture that seed so it can grow into that tree, man. All right. And it says, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you, man. And that's the power that the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua gave unto us, man. And again, first and foremost, before we try to, you know, remove, you know, and cast out unclean spirits and demons, and remove obstacles out of others' way, we must first do it unto ourselves, man. All right. Because two things. When I read that scripture, I think of one thing. The bishop of the Lions Den camp once said, we don't really have any problems. All right. Because, you know, ultimately Yahweh Shem Yahushua is the ultimate solution. You feel me? So is there really a problem if you have the solution to it? You know, is there really a problem if you have the power and the solution to that said thing? Nah, it's not really a problem. It's just you know, just an obstacle. Just you know, right? You know, matter of fact, nah, don't go over it. Go through it. You know, go through it, or push it straight on out the way, man. You know, and I was thinking of like Superman. You know, like on them, like the animated DC films, man. Whenever a Superman or like a super powerful person is flying, and it's you know, an obstacle in front of them, man, they don't go around it, they don't go above it, they don't go under it, man, they go through it, you know, or just simply knock it straight out the way, you know. And man, that's how we are to be in spirit and in truth, man. You know, removing those removing those, you know, our own mountains, you know what I'm saying, out of our own ways, and, you know, casting out those unclean spirits and demons out of ourselves, man, you know, before we can do it unto others. All right. And the main point I wanted to get is right here. It says in verse 21, it says, howbeit this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting, man. All right. So you're only going to get to that point through prayer and fasting, through effort, you know, through effort, man, through doing the work, man, through purging yourself, through reading, through studying, through, man, you know, constantly pushing yourself to be stronger, to be better, bearing your cross every day, man. You know, every day, you know, you got to step in that ring every day, man. You know, man, you got to step in that ring every day, you know. And that's eventually how that's what's going to allow that seed, that mustard seed, to grow into that big, beautiful tree with those strong roots, you know, rooted within the Lord, rooted within the spirit of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, and his knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, man. All right. And I'm gonna keep it moving, because like I said, I don't want the phone to die or cut off because of lack of storage. But this is the book of James, chapter 2, and I'm gonna start at verse 17. It says, even so faith, if it have not works, is dead, being alone. Yea, a man may say, thou hast faith and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works, man. All right, so it says, even so faith, if it have not works, is dead, being alone, man. You know, and faith and hope are, you know, are pretty much synonymous, man. So if you're not putting forth works or effort, you know what I'm saying, there will be no validation for having any type of hope. All right, because you're not putting in any works or any effort. So, you know what I'm saying, there's no hope. You know, it is nothing to validate you having hope, you know. But man, if you're doing those things that the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua requires of you in truth and in sincerity, man, day in and day out, You actively killing that old man, you know, and striving to be righteous, striving to be a man of the Lord, man. That's putting in the work, that's putting in the efforts, and those are things to validate having hope in salvation, man, having hope in mercy, having hope in redemption, man, you know. And it says, yea, man may say, thou hast faith and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works, man. And I was thinking, man, picture like a young man, right? Man, he in the gym every day. He training routes. You know what I'm saying? He watching film. He always working out, always practicing. When somebody say, hey man, what you doing all that for? He say, I hope to go to the NFL one day, right? Man, his hope would be validated because he putting in some form of effort. So it's a possibility. All right, but if that same young man was to say, man, I want to go to the NFL one day, but he ain't never even picked up a football, never even laced up his cleats, never even stepped on the turf, never, man, there's no validation for hope, So point being, man, that effort and the hope lies within the effort, man, that we produce, kind of. And I'm gonna get this. This is the book of John, chapter 3 and verse 18, and it says, he that believeth, Salaki. Okay, this is the book of John, chapter 3 and verse 17, and it says, verse 16, for Yahweh so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life, man. All right, and the world that is talking about there is not the whole world. It's talking about the world of Israel, man, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, but it says, for Yahweh sent not his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he have not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God, Yahweh Shem Yahweh, man. All right. So, man, if you believe, man, you believe in the Lord, man. It's like if you believe in the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahweh, even with that smallest amount of faith, as a grain, that smallest amount of faith as a grain of mustard seed, man, you are not condemned, man. You're not, because you believe in the Lord, man. This is the truth. Man, it ain't nothing else out there. All right. You're not condemned, man. So now you just have to put forth the effort, to validate having hope, man. Hope, having put in the effort to validate having hope that the Lord, man, will save you, man, from the coming destruction, that the Lord feed you and your family in the midst of famine, that the Lord protect you and keep you safe in the midst of violence and chaos out here. All right. Man, you're not condemned. You just gotta put forth those efforts, put forth those works, because the hope lies within the effort. And man, with that, I'm gonna say shalom. I pray and hope that lesson was edifying and are encouraging. Shalom.